Welcome to today's webinar, Better Together, Subscribing, Marketing, and Authenticating Third-Party Services. Today we're going to look at three co-op services, licensing, Sitka's Evergreen, and LibPress, and how you can use any combination of those services together in relation to third-party products your library subscribes to. We're going to start with subscribing to products through licensing, talk about how some products can be authenticated via Sitka's Evergreen and authentication in more general terms. And then we'll look at how you can market those products to your users through your LibPress website or your own website. Even if you don't use all three services through the co-op, you should be able to take what we talk about today and apply it to the services you do use. And we're going to start with licensing. So over to you, Jessie.
Thank you. So I'm Jessie Hawks. I work with Tammy Satala to support libraries in licensing digital products for your patrons. And I'm excited to talk today about how to license new digital products for your library. Specifically today, I'm going to show you how to request quotes for new products using Consortia Manager, which is the platform we use to manage our digital licensing and renewals with libraries. If you're here, you're likely already familiar with Consortia Manager, as it's the platform we now use to manage all of our licensing renewals. Requesting a quote to subscribe to a new product is only one of the actions available in Consortia Manager, and I won't be diving into all the other features, but if you'd like to become more familiar with Consortia Manager and everything it can do, you can access our training videos on our site, and I'll send a link in the handout that will be provided after the session. Okay, so here we are in Consortia Manager. To view potential products you are interested in licensing, you first sign in. If you don't have access to Consortia Manager, someone in your organization theoretically should. Feel free to reach out to me via email and we can make sure that you or the appropriate person has a login. So here we are in Consortia Manager. Also, if you'll excuse me for using screenshots instead of doing a live demo, we don't have a Consortia Manager test account and I want to respect all the library's privacies. So I'm using Alert Bay's account here as an example. You'll note we have a few totals redacted just for privacy purposes. So when you log in, this is what you'll see. It'll be your dashboard, which is specific to your institution. And this will have a record of all the products you have currently licensed or have licensed in the past. So let's say your library is curious about a new subscription and wants to get an idea of what the cost would be. To view all the products that are available for licensing, you select Catalog at the top of the screen on your Consortia Manager homepage, and that will take you to the product catalog. From the product catalog, you can see your existing subscriptions. And then there's options to see only the products you subscribe to, any product that has already provided a quote to your library, or all the products available in Consortia Manager. So right now we're seeing all the products available in Consortia Manager. The products with a green check mark, like you can see there in the far right column, are ones the library currently subscribes to. So in the case of Alert Bay here, it's Bibliothèque Numérique. You may also see pricing for products that you have requested a quote for. They're redacted in the screenshot, but that's where they would appear. Occasionally, pricing may appear here for a product you haven't requested a quote for. The reason for that is if we ever receive a pricing quote from a vendor that includes individual quotes for all of the libraries in the co-op, we automatically add all the quotes to Consortia Manager so libraries can see pricing without needing to go through the whole request a quote process. So if you see a quote showing up that you didn't request, that's why it's there. Products with the blue request price button are ones this library has not requested a quote from and does not currently subscribe to. Also note that not every single product in the product catalog may be available for your library. So for example, if you are a public library, you may still see products listed in the product catalog that are only available to academic libraries. If you have any questions about if something's available or appropriate for your library, just reach out and we can help you with that. You also can click on the vendor names to learn more about the product, but I will say that we don't have tons of vendor information uploaded in Consortia Manager right now. We're hoping to add more info in the coming year, but in the meantime, if you want more information about what a product is or what it can offer, it's likely the most beneficial to just go directly to their website to get some specific details. Okay, so let's say you're ready to request a quote. So if you've identified a product you're interested in licensing, you may select Request Price, that blue button, and this will prompt a pop-up requesting details. You don't need to provide really any additional information in this pop-up. We'll get in touch with you if we need more info from you. Do make sure to change the date to the current date so that your quote is prorated for the remainder of the year instead of the full year. And it's worth noting, it's mentioned at the top of that box there, that requesting a quote is not an instantaneous or automated process. So when you request a quote, we contact the vendor on your behalf, and then we'll get back to you with a quote once it's available. So it involves some back and forth between humans. So it can take up to 4 weeks to get a quote from the vendor. Just helpful to have some accurate expectations. If your pricing request is time sensitive, do mention that in the notes field, and we'll do our best to move it through quickly. Okay. Once you've received a quote, the quote will appear in your product catalog instead of the request price. Again, it's where the redacted figures are right now. If you'd like to proceed in licensing the product, you can add the product to your cart by selecting the shopping cart. And then from there, you can place the final order by clicking on your shopping cart and selecting place orders. There are a few exceptions to this process here. So for example, if you are a post-secondary school in BC, you'll want to reach out to BC ELN for information about licenses. If you're a post-secondary school in Manitoba, you'll follow the process here as I've outlined it. Essentially, if you have any questions along the way, do just reach out to Tammy or me directly, or you can go through our general support email that's listed here. We'll also be talking about how to add a support ticket later in the presentation, and that's another way of getting in touch with us. I will include the link to the Consortia Manager training videos in the handout that we'll be sending out afterwards. You'll have my contact information, so if you have any questions, please just reach out. Thank you. So Jennifer, now we'll talk about authentication and Sitka.
Thank you, Jessie. So now we're going to talk about how you can authenticate the products that you've purchased through licensing, including how you can request third-party services be integrated with Sitka's Evergreen. And we're going to start with just a brief overview of Sitka's Evergreen because not everybody uses that product or may be familiar with it. So Sitka is a consortium of over 100 libraries across 4 provinces using Evergreen as their shared integrated library system. The consortium is made up of public, post-secondary, government, special, and K-12 school libraries. And we have a shared database that allows for shared cataloging and reciprocal borrowing within Evergreen, including Interlibrary Connect, which is used in both BC and Manitoba, and the BC One Card program in BC. Evergreen's the open source software used by the Sitka Consortium. Sitka's Evergreen is our customized version of the open source ILS Evergreen, and we're currently running Evergreen version 3.14.4, but we'll be upgrading to Evergreen 3.17 the first weekend of October. So that's an exciting thing that's coming in the next few months. So now we're going to talk about the ways you can authenticate your users, which will apply to all libraries regardless of the ILS that you use. And there are a number of different ways a third-party service can authenticate your users. Some methods require communication with your ILS database and others don't. So the first here is barcode pattern matching. This is when the vendor has your barcode prefix on file, and when a user goes to log in, the vendor just checks to see if their barcode that they're entering matches the prefix they have on file for you. And this method doesn't talk to your ILS, and an example would be EBSCO databases. You also have IP addresses, generally used for in-library resources. This is where the vendor looks at the IP address the service is being accessed from to determine if access is permitted. And libraries must provide vendors with their current IP addresses for this to work. And an example that many libraries use of this would be Ancestry. Then we have Easy Proxy, which is a web proxy server your users sign into, which then rewrites the URL for the resource the user is trying to access and uses its IP address to show the vendor that your user is authorized. For some libraries, this means a list of valid user barcodes is kept on the Easy Proxy server, and resources using Easy Proxy have special prefixes in the URLs in your catalog to direct to that Easy Proxy server. So those three methods don't generally need or don't for barcode pattern matching and IP address don't need any interaction with your ILS, and Easy Proxy generally doesn't as well. And we just have a question. I'm assuming the IP address auth would require a static IP. In general, yes. I think you can enter a range of IPs potentially, but I would defer to Tammy and Jesse on the licensing side for further questions about that. Now, we also have database authentication. And that's where the vendor is communicating with your ILS via one of several possible methods. And you can see we have quite a few different potential methods listed here. For Sitka's Evergreen, most authentication is via encrypted SIP2 or Patron API. And we do have a policy that we don't integrate new services with Sitka's Evergreen that are using unencrypted SIP2. And for example, encrypted SIP2 is how Bibliothèque Numérique authenticates for the Sitka libraries that subscribe to that. And Patron API is how Overdrive authenticates for both the BC and Manitoba libraries. Now, the communication that happens between the database and the vendor varies depending on what the service actually does. So for some services, the patron simply enters their barcode and the vendor sends a request to the database to confirm that it exists. Sometimes they're asking for both the barcode and the password. For example, PC reservations, userful, are ones that are simply asking if the user exists, and in some cases requiring their password as well. Other services will send a request to confirm that the patron exists and that they're in a state that's actually allowed to use the service. For example, Overdrive, when they send requests to the server, they're asking whether or not the patron is expired. And if the patron is expired, Overdrive then denies them access. And they have to follow up with the library to get renewed to be able to use Overdrive again. And then we have some services like self-checkouts, book lockers that need to create or modify transactions in the database. So when an item is checked out via a third-party self-check machine, your ILS is sending not only patron information, but also item information to the self-check machine so it can display that to the user. And then the self-check machine is sending information back to the ILS so that that circulation actually gets recorded in the database, updated so that it shows in the patron's account if they log into their account online, and that other data that would normally get updated for a transaction gets updated as well so that the item's status shows as checked out. So that's the basics of how the database authentication is happening. Now, when looking at subscribing to a new product, it's very important that Sitka libraries read the third-party service integration policy and fill out the third-party service integration with Sitka's Evergreen survey before you even purchase anything. The policy in the survey can be found in Sitka's Evergreen Policy and Best Practices Manual, and the links to those will be provided in the handout for this session. So while Sitka's Evergreen can be used to authenticate your users for third-party products, not all products support authentication this way, and Evergreen doesn't support authentication with all products. So once you've read the policy, filled out the survey, co-op staff still need to assess the product and determine whether or not it can actually be integrated with Sitka's Evergreen for authentication. And we have had cases where the vendor couldn't provide an acceptable method for authentication, and so the library wasn't able to go ahead with the product. Which is why we really encourage you to fill out the survey, contact support, talk to support before you make those purchases, just to make sure we're actually going to be able to integrate it for you. If the product's already being used by another Sitka library, it's generally a really short turnaround to confirm that it can be integrated for your library as well. Now, for products not already set up with Sitka's Evergreen, libraries should anticipate a 3 to 6 month turnaround for co-op staff to be able to complete that assessment and confirm that this is something that can be integrated. And then if the service meets the requirement, implementation times depend on co-op staff availability, the support available from the vendor, and your library's IT department's support, expertise, and availability. There are some products that require S-tunnel be set up on the library's end in order to provide that encrypted SIP option. So now that we've talked about how you can get your products set up for your libraries to use, I'm going to pass things over to Leah to talk about how you can then let your patrons actually know about them.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, in this next section of the webinar, we'll transition into discussing how to promote your licensed digital products on your LibPress site. And I know not everyone here uses LibPress and might not be familiar with this branch of the co-op services. So I'll start with just a little overview of that. LibPress is a library website service that's hosted by the co-op. It's built with WordPress. It provides public libraries with an affordable and accessible option for their public websites. And the sites are built on a customizable and user-friendly template. Libraries get to choose their own themes and colors, edit their own events, and write their own content, all with support from the co-op team. And LibPress is currently used by more than 70 libraries and library federations across BC and Manitoba. And even if you don't use LibPress, hopefully there'll still be some inspiration and ideas that you can take away from today and apply to your own websites. So on a LibPress site, there are three main focal points on your homepage that you can consider as areas for enhancing visibility of your products. So that'll be the front page slideshow, your highlight columns, and the main navigation menu, which are all circled and labeled on the slide here. So we'll go through and take a look at each of them one by one. And we'll start with the front page slideshow. So the home pages have a full width slideshow that's ideal for promoting your digital resources. And you can create your own slides using software such as Canva, or you can use our pre-made slide options that are available from the co-op in our shared media section, or you can use a combination of the two. On the screen right now, I have Nelson Public Library's homepage. And using the colors and styles that are consistent with their own library branding, they've created this custom slide that promotes Libby to their library users. And slides work best when they're eye-catching and accessible. So in this example, we have bold and relevant graphics, minimal text with a high contrast ratio between the orange background and the white text that says read with Libby. So the goal of a slide is to redirect a patron to another page on your site for detailed information and not necessarily to fit all the information on the slide itself. And the slide itself should contain a sentence or two at the most. For popular resources like Novelist, Ancestry Library Edition, Gale courses, LinkedIn Learning, and Bibliothèque Numérique, which you see on the screen, the co-op has created a variety of shared slides that are available for your use. And there's a link in the handout that'll get emailed out afterwards, which will show you a full list of all of the shared slides. And the shared media slides are found in your Slideshow Manager dashboard under the Site Manager admin menu. And any slides that are for resources that are geographically specific, like Library to Go and Read Local BC, or e-libraries in Manitoba, they'll all be clearly labeled and separated into different categories. The next section of the homepage is the highlight columns area. The LibPress layout has one main content area on the homepage that's divided into three columns for libraries to highlight various programs, services, or events. And I have three screenshots from three of our member libraries on the slide that you see right now. So that's Fernie Heritage Library, Castlegarden District Public Library, and Cranbrook Public Library. And I think I see Fernie is here today. So thank you for letting me feature a little snippet of your website. There are a few different ways to highlight various digital resources in this highlights area. And one example is the Overdrive carousel to highlight material from your Overdrive collection. And there's an example on the Castlegarn District Public Library screenshot on the far left of the slide with the title New eBooks and Audio, and that's pulling titles from Overdrive. To add an Overdrive carousel, a short code snippet gets added to the highlights column on the homepage, and then your LibPress site will pull the data directly from Overdrive. It'll display a rotating carousel of content in the format that you specify. So you can have ebooks, magazines, or audiobooks, or a mix of all three if you leave the format unspecified. Or you can, pick and choose from those three formats. And the cover art for each item will be displayed along with the title, and clicking on the item will take you directly to its record. All three of the libraries that I've featured on this slide have also added buttons to their highlight columns, which promote their digital resources and link directly to them. As you can see, the shapes, sizes, colors, and layout of the buttons are all uniquely customized by the library that created them. And each library has also chosen to highlight different resources. And this is something you can do based on your own unique collection of digital resources, your community demographics and interests, and the resources that are either the most popular or ones that are new that you'd like to give an extra boost to. You can also make use of the shared media that's available through the co-op. You can browse the shared media images by going to your dashboard, to media, and then to shared media images. And I've got just kind of like a selection of what's available in that area on the slide. There's a mix of logos like Libby and Ancestry. We also have some graphics that have been created by our co-op marketing team, such as that little series for Bibliothèque Numérique that matches that slide that we saw earlier. These can be used as is, or you can also incorporate the logos and graphics into your own custom creations. Talking a lot about creating custom graphics for your site. So I just wanted to quickly give you a little tip here for your own staff. If you do want to be creating slides and buttons, you can use any graphic design software, but a common choice among our members is Canva. Popular, of course, because it's free, web-based, very intuitive, and has a variety of customizable templates. And some of your staff may already be familiar with using Canva, while others might be wanting to learn this new skill. And one way to learn the new skill or continue building the existing skill is to encourage your staff to make use of your library's licensed resources, such as LinkedIn Learning. And there are so many LinkedIn Learning tutorials and video courses that focus on Canva, on beginner, intermediate, or advanced skills. And the benefits here are multiple. By upskilling in Canva, your staff will be better equipped to create attractive and effective marketing graphics for your site, driving traffic to your digital resources. And they'll also gain hands-on skills in navigating and using the LinkedIn Learning platform itself. So they'll be better able to support your patrons when they're using this resource. And also they can engage in authentic word-of-mouth promotion of the library's digital resources that they've had a chance to use themselves. We'll take a moment now to look at how the layout of your main menu, also called your primary navigational menu, can support the marketing and promotion of your digital resources. And a project you may want to undertake, if you haven't already, is reorganizing your menu to reduce the number of clicks that it takes to get to these resources. So how can you make it as easy as possible for your site visitors to find the digital resources that they're looking for? Primary navigation menus should aim for 5 to 7 top-level items and around 7 submenu items. This is based on cognitive psychology research about cognitive load and working memory. Most neurotypical people can comfortably hold about 7 chunks of information in their head at once without experiencing decision fatigue or distraction. I'm just going to pause for a sec because I see a question. Do those of you that have LinkedIn Learning think it is well used by your patrons, and is it cost effective? Maybe that could be a good group discussion for later on. Thank you for that question, Laranda. So when you're thinking about your menu, you want to be thinking about what resources do you want people to find first? What's the demographic of your community? What resources do they use the most? How can you increase visibility on any of your newly licensed products in order to help people find out about them? I have an example on the slide, again, from Nelson Public Library. I like this example because they've decided to add this e-library top-level menu item with a submenu of 5 categories of online resources that are available through their library. So that's ebooks, e-magazines, watch online for films and online learning, and then research and tools. And each one of their submenu items goes to a dedicated landing page, which connects their patron to each of those resources, as well as more information about each resource. And lastly, for my section, I wanted to highlight something that we've been excited about at LibPress, and that is our LibPress 2.0 project. For some context and background on that project, we've been working on it since probably January of 2025. But in October of last year, we started actually working with a select number of LibPress libraries to start using the tools. And so they redesigned their sites using WordPress's block editor. This way of building a site has a lot more flexibility than the classic LibPress template, allowing for more creativity and variety in the site layout and content. And two LibPress libraries who have gone through the process and fully redesigned their sites are Pemberton and District Public Library and Salt Spring Island Public Library. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Jen at Pemberton and Alex at Salt Spring Island for their hard work on the planning, designing, and building out of these sites over the last number of months. And I wanted to finish my section today by highlighting this next generation of LibPress sites and some of the ways that they've leveraged the block editor tools in order to market their digital resources. And so on the screen right now is the homepage for the Pemberton and District Public Library. And on the following slide is the homepage or a snippet of the homepage for Salt Spring Island Public Library. And you'll note that both of these sites look quite different from the classic LibPress template. And these examples give us an idea of how LibPress 2.0 and the block editor can open the door for any number of creative website design ideas that you might have. So my final two slides will zoom in on some of the components of the sites that each of these libraries has built and customized specifically for their digital resources. So this one is from Pemberton and District. They've designed this attention-grabbing and informative card style slider carousel to connect patrons with their resources. So there's 3 showing on the screen, and then there's like little navigational arrows on each side. I think they have about 6 cards total that rotate. And on the next slide are some examples of content from Salt Spring Island Public Library's redesigned site. On the left is another example of a different style of carousel slider for digital resources. And it's a little bit small, but I hope you can still see it. All of the colors and the shapes, like the logos and the text copy, can all be customized, as well as the shape and size of the cards themselves. And I've included on the right a section that they created called What's New. It's not featuring digital resources, but I thought that that layout could really lend itself well to promoting digital resources. Just some prominent color blocked sections, and then it's got space for an image and a button to take you to the resource, and also an area for a short write-up or blurb about each one. And we are currently looking for some more libraries to take part in site redesigns with LibPress 2.0. So if you are curious about doing this with your LibPress site, please feel free to reach out to us in a support ticket, and we'd be happy to talk more with you about the process. And I think now we'll go back over to Jennifer to kick us off on talking about some troubleshooting.
Thanks, Leah.
Thanks.
So now once you have your product licensed, it's authenticating, and it's promoted to your libraries, you may need to troubleshoot it from time to time. So it's a good idea for libraries to have a troubleshooting patron account that uses a real barcode for your library for testing. And this way you can easily test when a patron reports that they can't access one of your third-party services. And staff then don't need to try it out with their own personal accounts. Co-op support does have a test account for every Sitka library to help us troubleshoot. So if you come across these ones, please don't delete them, because we do use them when we're helping troubleshoot issues that you've reported. So once you've confirmed there's an issue and it's not something that you can resolve on your end, who do you talk to when things aren't working?
Jumping in here, so for licensing, if you have a URL or a product that isn't working, what you'll want to do is submit a support ticket. We'll talk you through how to do that in a moment. You can also email licensing@bclibraries.coop or me or Tammy, but we prefer you to just sort of go through the main licensing at bclibraries.coop or ticket channel. If you get a new IP address, or if you're having issues with one of your products, it's always worth checking to see if the IP address in Consortia Manager is updated and accurate. So you can let us know if you're having a hard time finding where to update that in Consortia Manager, but there is a place there. After you've updated it, if you're still running into IP issues, just let us know and we'll work with you. And then for the most part, just as a general rule, we encourage you to contact us instead of contacting the vendor directly. So, and if, in our dealings with the vendor, if we find it's more efficient for you to just speak directly with the vendor, we'll point you in the right direction. But we try to sort of streamline things for the vendors so that it's easy for them. Okay, over to Sitka.
Thanks. Sorry, just needed to find my mic to unmute it. So for Sitka Libraries, if a product or service that you authenticate against Sitka's Evergreen isn't working, you need to contact co-op support. We'll be able to determine if the issue is with the SIP2 or the patron API account on our end, or if you're authenticating via a different method with the database, and then be able to resolve that, or determine if the issue is on the vendor's end, and then be able to either redirect you to licensing to resolve that, or work with licensing ourselves to get that back up and working for you.
And in terms of LibPress issues that you might run into, if you notice that slideshow images are not available or not working, or if you see a broken link, also if you've uploaded a slide to your media library, but it's not showing as available in the slideshow manager, feel free to reach out. With the overdrive carousels, we want to know if you see it not showing any items, if you notice missing cover art, if the cover art is wrong, if the wrong format is showing, please reach out. And if you have suggestions for new shared slides or shared media, if you notice that, or also if you notice that any of the existing content on the slides needs updating.
Thanks, Leah. So I'm just going to stop the slideshow here and switch us over to the BC Libraries Cooperative website. And I'm just going to take us to the main support page. So the best way to get support for any of these services is to fill out the request support form on bc.libraries.coop/support. When filling in this form, you have the ability to choose your library. So you can just start typing in and your library name will appear in the list and you can select it. When filling in the I need help with field, you're either going to choose Sitka Evergreen for Sitka's Evergreen, LibPress for LibPress, or licensing admin for licensing admin, as appropriate. And when the form is submitted, a ticket is then created in our ticketing system in the corresponding queue. And that means the relevant staff see your ticket right away and are able to triage and help resolve your reported issue. Now, the more information that you provide in your initial ticket, the faster we can generally help resolve your issues. We do have guidelines for submitting support requests. So if we go here, as well as a video which walks through it, and links to those will be in the handout. And just the more information you can provide up front, the less likely we are to have to do a lot of back and forth before we can start resolving whatever's going on. So your product is now licensed, it's authenticating, promoted to your libraries, and being used successfully by your patrons. And the final piece is going to be gathering statistics. So I'm going to hand it over to Jesse for that piece.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So at some point, you will likely need to report patron usage statistics for the products that you have licensed. Where you get your stats from varies product by product. So we have a sort of a non-exhaustive Excel spreadsheet of various products with information about whether to contact the vendor directly or to contact the co-op for stats. I'm going to include the link to this sheet in the handout. You can kind of see here. So on this first tab, you can get a general overview of which type of metrics your library might be interested in counting, or a service might be able to provide. So for example, collection size or session count for an e-resource. And there's some information that you can click on in there. And then on the second tab, you'll see a list of several of our vendors. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but maybe a good starting point. You'll see a note about which metrics they collect and then how to get in touch with the vendors to get those stats, or whether you should just contact us at the co-op. So obviously this isn't a complete list of every e-resource that we license. And so as a general rule of thumb, you'll contact the vendor for stats, or in some cases, you might have access to an admin page with usage statistics that you can log into yourself. If you're having trouble getting any stats from a vendor, you can always reach out to the licensing team via the support ticket or email us, and we'll connect you to the proper person.
And that takes us to the end of our content for today. So I'm going to stop the recording